So anyway, we are now, the last time we met, we finished statement 1.6, yeah, statement 1.6 that says the seeds of each of the later wheels of Dharma exist in each of the earlier ones. Now, statement 1.7, I can tell you, I'm a little puzzled by it, the way it's phrased. And then when you look at the commentary, and then also when you look at, what Sherab Jungne says, the statement is a response to, I still find this statement a little bit puzzling. But anyway, maybe you can help me clarify this. Yeah. So it says, statement 1.7, through the meaning of the sutras and the vital points of the meaning, the wheels are certainly three. Here again, I want to make a comment or to reiterate. Again, I don't have the Tibetan right in front of me. And even if I do, I've said to you many times, I'm not trained to read Tibetan. Whatever little Tibetan I'm capable of reading, it's all very rudimentary. But here I really feel that the translation of three wheels is better understood as three turnings of the wheel. Three turnings of the wheel. One single Dharma wheel, which is the Buddha's teaching or the Buddha's teachings, but can be differentiated into three turnings. So anyway, through the meaning of the sutras and the vital points of the meaning, the turnings are certainly three. So it's this part, certainly three, that's a little puzzling to me. Anyway, Sherab Jungne tells us that the context for this Vajra statement is that generally people claim that the three turnings are differentiated through the particular places, times, and so forth of proclaiming them. So what this is talking about is that outside the context of Gongchik, outside of what Kyopa Rinpoche is addressing, the general opinions out there among all the different scholars, the different masters, they will say that how you tell how many turnings there are, firstly, and secondly, maybe more to the point, how do you tell if this particular teaching belongs to the first, the second, or the third, is based on either where the Buddha taught it, so particular places, or when the Buddha taught it, particular times, and so forth. So apparently then, Kyopa Rinpoche's response to those opinions, that you can tell which teaching belongs to which turning based on information like where did the Buddha teach it. So for example, there's one opinion that says that if he taught it in like Deer Park and places like that, then it belongs to the first turning. If he taught it on Voucher Peak, which is where a lot of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras were taught, in Voucher Peak in Rajagriha, then you can say, oh yeah, that's a second turning. And then if he taught it at Shravasti and places like that, oh, that's the third turning. Or some will say, oh, if he taught it at the beginning of his teaching career, of his teaching life, oh, then that's the first turning. If he taught it sometime later, that's the second turning. Or if he taught it towards the end of his life, it's the third turning. Jigten Sumgen says, no, that's not how you figure out which is which. So he says, through the meaning of the sutras and the vital points of the meaning, then you can ascertain the turnings. And this part, the turnings are certainly three. I'm not sure how it kind of addresses the common view, because it seems like by saying certainly three, from my limited understanding, it seems to be saying, and therefore it's not two, nor is it four, but it's certainly three. Kind of Monty Python skit, count to three, not four, and certainly not two. Four is totally unacceptable. It should be three. But anyway, let's see, okay? Then resume Chodra's commentary. Within the collections of Dharma, there are no differentiations into sections and classes. However, for the sake of easy comprehension, the turnings of the wheel are known as a sequence of three. One does not differentiate them through place, time, retinue, and so on. So he's saying, you do not differentiate them through, because he taught it to the 5 monks, therefore, that is the first turning. Because he taught it to the bodhisattvas, therefore, that has to be a second turning or third turning. So Chodra continues, at the place of the first turning, Varanasi, the Buddha also taught a few Mahayana and mantra dharmas, such as the Dorje Chu and the Pel Amol Lungden. At the place of the second turning, Greta Kutta, which is Vulture Peak, those of you who went to India pilgrimage with me last time during the 800th anniversary, wonderful, I think, very meaningful for me to be there. Unfortunately, we got lazy. We did not go to Vulture Peak, Greta Kutta. Day was getting late. People were getting exhausted. I was getting lazy. And so we went to Nalanda. And then we're like, Rajagriha is kind of far, even at this time of the day. Maybe it will be closed by the time we get there. Let's go now. So we went home. Sorry. At the place of the second wheel, so first wheel, Varanasi, more specific, Saranath, that we went. Then Vulture Peak. He taught many Hinayana sutras and sutras of the final wheel. Moreover, at the places of the final turning, such as Kushinagar, he taught Hinayana sutras as well. So some examples given. Then Chodra goes on to show how you cannot say it's based on time. Because even in the early period, Buddha taught many Mahayana teachings, such as Vajravidarana, Mahapratisara, and the Avatamsaka, the Huayan Jing in Chinese, that was taught even before he taught the 5 monks. So you can't say, earlier in his life he taught first turning, later in his life second turning. Now as for retinue, he says, while the Buddha taught the first wheel, while the Buddha taught the first turning, not only were the retinue of the first five disciples present, but also gods and immeasurable bodhisattvas. Likewise, during the second turning, inconceivable Hinayana retinues of Shravakas were present. So like Diamond Sutra, Subhuti is the main person the Buddha was talking to. Hat Sutra, Shariputra was the main person that Avalokiteshvara was addressing. So you cannot say, because it's taught to bodhisattvas, therefore it's this turning or that turning. Because it was taught to primarily Shravaka Arhats, therefore it's this or that. And he says you cannot do that either. So he gave some examples. Moving on. Then on 76, And this is the turn in argument or in logic that it's a little bit lost. On 76, Chodra's commentary says, therefore it is certain that the wheels are three. In that case, even though or it's certain that the turnings are three. In that case, even though the three turnings lead to the attainment of the ultimate and are not different in their results, temporarily they have strengths and weaknesses concerning the meaning to be expressed and the words that express it. The differences occurred only regarding those who voiced the above statements, spoken first by the gods below the Brahma stage, second by the gods of the pure heaven, and third by the bodhisattvas who dwell on the 10th stage. This is in reference to the quotation that was just given, so don't worry too much about the detail. So the next part, he says, the vital point of the meaning is that the turnings are definitely taught as a series of three. The meaning of the first turning is to introduce cause and result as emptiness. The meaning of the second turning is the arising of emptiness as cause and result. And the meaning of the third turning is that both, i.e. cause and result and emptiness, exist without duality. This is well established in the Madhyamaka Avatara. To me, this is the most important point for this statement. I'm still lost as to why definitely it is three, and implying that, 4 is unacceptable and 2 is not enough. I don't understand exactly why. Because it's quite clear that it is saying, first of all, to even say that it is 3, it's just based on kind of temporary context that we assert that there is 3. But in fact, the Dharma is one single Dharma that leads to the ultimate result of Buddhahood. So anyway, I feel no matter, but in the commentary, it's helpful to kind of know that, again, the emphasis is whether a particular teaching or practice, I think this is our take-home lesson, whether a particular teaching or practice that we receive and we accept as, oh, Buddha taught this, we should not, make these superficial, we should not be misled by superficial criterion for saying, oh, this practice is really profound. Oh, that practice is really for the middling. And that is really for the lower. Oh, Four Noble Truths, that's just, Buddhism for dummies. Oh, Mahamudra, that's like really profound. Or like, oh, Mahamudra, that's just a mistake, it's really this or it's that. Oh, it's, this and that. And the point here in all these statements that we've looked at is that the Dharma is a single point. Just as it is said in some sutras, right? All the Dharmas, all the Buddhas, all the Dharmas that the Buddha taught has one taste, the taste of liberation, single taste. This expression is very popular in East Asia, especially, Yiwei, in Mandarin. Yiwei, one taste. And what is this one taste? This expression is found even in Pali sources. One taste. It is the taste of liberation. It is the taste of freedom. And then, of course, from the Mahayana perspective, not just personal freedom, not just individual liberation, but the liberation and freedom of all beings. So all dharmas have one taste, the taste of liberation. Then based on, right, the different capacities of the listeners, the recipients of those teachings, then the teachings can be differentiated into high and low, fast and slow, sudden and gradual, profound and not so profound. All of that is based on the capacity of the disciples. And then very importantly about the capacity of disciples, even when we talk about that, so in one of the statements, it says, it clarifies, but don't think that these capacities are fixed into the so-called 5 families, right? Gampopa's jewel ornament highlights these 5 families. But even there, after highlighting the 5 families, Gampopa says, but the definitive understanding is, in the end, there's only one family, which is we all have the Buddha seed. We all have the DNA of Buddha. And so even though other results, other fruits are kind of explained, like, oh, you can also become a Pratyeka Buddha, you can also become a Shravaka Buddha, you can also become this, you can also become that. According to this, to Mahayana, or this particular view, it says that finally the only true and complete goal is to be Buddha. So the so-called 5 families are again basically taught and explained in order to lead whoever is hearing it to further along the path. So like these 5 families, one of them is called cutoff, Ichantika, cutoff. That means on the surface, it seems like it's saying they have absolutely no hope whatsoever to be free from samsara. So it says that even when such an idea was taught, Buddha taught it not because there is in fact people or beings in that situation, but he taught it as a skillful way to warn whoever it is that he was teaching to be careful not to become such a type, to become an Ichantika, to become one who is cut off from any possibility of being free. So 1.7 anyway, coming back to here, then I think, so Chodra's commentary is helpful if I don't, focus so much on the literal saying of that statement, certainly 3. But Chodra's commentary helps me to see that, okay, it is not to be divided through when he taught it, where he taught it, to whom he taught it, all those. Then furthermore, I think Chodra's commentary, to me, most important is that last part. The vital point of the meaning is that the turnings are definitively taught as a series of 3. Again, this I don't quite understand. But next, the meaning of the first turning. And so this is to show, this is to come back to the central, you could say, central point of Gongchik. Elsewhere, I think towards the end of Kyopa Rinpoche's life, Kyopa Rinpoche said, people keep asking you, people, I'm sure he said to his disciples, I'm sure people keep asking, hey, your guru, your Lama, what would you say is his like main tenet? Tibetans really love tenet, and they love systems, right? So anyone and everyone who has, who is a great Lama, a great guru, will be asked this, and what is his system? What is his tenet? What does he hold to be supreme? What does he teach to be, the most important thing? And Kyopa Rinpoche resists this. He says, everything. If you ask, what do you think the Buddha taught that is the most important? Gilbert Rinpoche's standard answer is everything. And I use the example of like if you're asked, hey, in this recipe for this banana bread, which would you say is the most important ingredient? You might be tempted to say bananas because it's banana bread, right? If no banana, what makes it banana bread? So you would say, oh, banana is the most important thing. Gilbert Rinpoche will say everything. The bananas, the eggs, the vanilla, the flour, the water, and all in the right proportion. And depending on whether you're baking it down at sea level or you're baking it up in Cusco, you have to adjust the baking powder and the time and the temperature. All of that, important. Don't force me to say only one thing is the most important. So Gilbert Rinpoche would maintain that, throughout his. But at the end of his life, he said, but if people keep pushing, and they say, but what is your master's? What does your master say? What does your guru say? To be the core tenet. Okay, maybe not his core tenet. What about the core tenet, the core teaching of the Buddha? What makes it the Buddhist system? Then he said, my master said, if you really want to force me to say something, first thing I say is my master always maintained, my guru always maintained that he does not hold any system as final. He does not rigidly hold any system. And he says, but if you want him to say something in terms of system, then he says, it's the system of cause and effect. It's the system of completely seeing clearly and understanding cause and effect and all the implications of cause and effect, and therefore dependent arising. And now, then we know, right? Dependent arising also means emptiness. And so here in this last part, Gilbert Rinpoche explains, Choda explains. And he's going to show cause and effect and emptiness. And cause and effect you can also substitute with dependent arising, interdependent arising, and emptiness. But he's going to show how this topic can be understood in the context of the three turnings. The meaning of the first turning is to introduce cause and result as emptiness. This is very interesting, this point. Normally, we would say the meaning of the first turning is to introduce cause and result, karma. But Chodra says is to introduce cause and result as emptiness. The meaning of the second turning is the arising of emptiness as cause and result. So this is really interesting. In that, more likely, others will say, and so here, I don't think it's specific to Gongchik, but this three lines worth looking at again and again. Later, maybe when we understand more about Gongchik, we can come back and look at this. But here he seems to be saying that already in the first turning, not only did Buddha teach about cause and result, which is what most people will say. In the first turning, the Buddha taught about cause and result. Second turning, Buddha taught the emptiness of cause and result. But here it says, first turning, the Buddha taught cause and result as emptiness. Second turning, how cause and result arises from emptiness. Third, cause and result and emptiness exist without duality, meaning they're not opposed to each other. So this I find very interesting. So your thoughts, comments, many things here.
Hello, Dr. Lai. This is
Yes.
Joan.
Yes.
I get it about interdependent arising and cause and result, and emptiness being, if I understood correctly, dependent arising. But my mind doesn't get what dependent arising means. Do you have some other words for explaining dependent arising? I know it's emptiness, but I don't know. I just need a little more.
Dependent arising means due to this cause, this result arose. Due to this result, this other causes arose. And due to this, that appeared. And due to that, that appeared. So everything arises interdependently. Everything has come into existence interdependently. And therefore, everything will also disappear and cease when those causes and conditions that have brought them together are no longer there. Yes? No?
Not kind of. Yeah. So that's interdependent arising.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So dependent arising.
Same. This is all just English.
Same. Okay.
Yeah, as in arising in dependence on something.
Okay.
Interdependent arising, not independent arising.
Oh.
Independent arising is what other people believe. Interdependent arising, pratitya samutpada.
Okay.
It's a basic Buddhist teaching. Everything arises interdependently. You make a change here, everything changes. You make a change there, everything changes. That's another implication. It's another way of talking about cause and effect.
Is this basically what the Heart Sutra is saying?
You could say that. I don't know what you think Heart Sutra says, so I'm not going to commit to.
I forget the specific.
Oh, then if you forget, it's even harder for me to commit.
I need to pull it out then, obviously, and get the right words, but it's emptiness. It goes through, this is this and this is this. It turns it around. Again, I can't remember the specific words it uses, but it seems to me that it's saying, these are saying, the first two are saying the same thing.
Which two?
The first meaning of the first turning and the meaning of the second turning.
They're not saying the same thing.
Saying one is dependent upon the other and the other is dependent upon the one.
Yeah, but there are finer points. But you could say, yeah, sure, you could say they are the same. But then, you come back to the question, well, if they are the same, well, then why say it twice?
Well, it's a different meaning.
Yes, so they're not the same.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So you could say that to show that cause and result. So let's take it outside the context of this commentary. Let's just take those phrases. Yeah? Cause and result as emptiness. So first we have to understand cause and result. We have to understand that things don't, things as in, things, phenomena, they don't turn up without a cause. They don't turn up causeless. They don't turn up, in other words, haphazardly with no rhyme or reason. And they don't turn up with one cause. Whether the one cause is God or fate or some, in other words, some external single cause. nor is it causeless, nor do they cause themselves, nor are they. So these are said to be the four positions. It's basically asking the question of, why do I, or why are there things? It says they are not, things do not arise from themselves, do not arise from other, do not arise from a combination of self and other, and do not arise from neither. Those are the traditional four possibilities, which according to Madhyamaka teachings, it shows how all four positions are untenable. Again, I don't think we want to go into that. To summarize that for our purposes, I would say basically this dependent arising teachings show that everything arises interdependently. But this saying how cause and effect as emptiness is to be able to see how, even though we accept in cause and effect, or interdependent arising, or dependent arising, in the end, the things that have arisen, you cannot even say that they are ultimately and truly there. That's the first point. Second point is he's saying, but having understood the emptiness of all phenomena, you should also be able to see, Buddha also wants you to see how that emptiness arises, manifests as cause and effect, plays out as cause and effect. This is back to Gongchik's statement 1.1. Shi gineluk, bab gineluk. Shi gineluk, essence, the natural state of the essence, and the nature of how it plays out. Then the third turning, he says, where you can see these two as inseparable. So in a way, he seems to invert, so that the first turning is the emptiness side, the second turning is the form side, the third turning is the inseparability of emptiness and form. This commentary here. He seems to inverse the first two. Now, I'm not saying this is Gongchik, this is just Chodra's somehow way of presenting the three turnings in terms of the question of the relationship between cause and result on the one hand and emptiness on the other hand.
Kim helped me with the phrasing. Its form is emptiness. Emptiness is also form. Is this not the same thing that this is saying?
Other questions for 1.7? In Sobish's notes, he doesn't address at all how, therefore, it is certainly three, because I think he's also stumped. Certainly three. That part I don't understand. Four is not acceptable and two is not enough. There are some systems that talk about the fourth turning, and they say that mantra, or secret mantra, is the fourth turning. Right? And some say that Shentong is the fourth turning. For those of you who knows these terms, if you don't know, don't worry about it. Ready to go to 1-8? Or other questions or comments for 1-7?
Yes, Han, I have a question.
Yes.
In the statement when it says cause and result and emptiness exist without duality.
Yes.
Could you explain that part about the duality?
That means they don't oppose each other.
Oh.
Cause and result does not cancel emptiness. Emptiness does not cancel cause and result.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes these words, non-duality becomes really big words. And then we end up thinking it's something mystical, big, Here it just means, they don't oppose. They don't contradict. Because what happens is that we think, oh, if everything is empty, then nothing matters. That way of thinking simply would mean, emptiness trumps cause and effect. Then the other extreme would be cause and effect is everything. And emptiness cannot be true because everything is real. And that's cause and effect negating emptiness. That's also incorrect. And then you can study more Nagarjuna, which basically says, if emptiness wasn't the case, then no cause and effect can actually happen. You're like, what? Yes, you can investigate that. Yeah, he says, if, phenomena wasn't empty to start with, then no cause and effect can actually happen. No causation can arise. So 1-8. The Vinaya Pitaka, so these are like the three Pitakas, right? The Vinaya Pitaka, Sutra Pitaka, and Abhidharma Pitaka. So remembering these are the three baskets. We've already we've seen this mentioned. The three baskets and the four tantras, right? So of the three baskets, the first is the Vinaya Pitaka, the Vinaya basket, the Vinaya collection. And then the Sutra collection, and then the Abhidharma collection. So here, he's going to go into this statement. The Vinaya Pitaka is the Dharma wheel of the four truths. And Sherab Jungne says, this is in response to people claim that the Dharma wheel of the four truths is the Abhidharma and not the Vinaya. So apparently there was some who says, that at the first turning, the main teachings for the first turning is to be found in the Abhidharma collection. So here, Jigten Sungpan says, during the first turning, most of those teachings are found in the Vinaya. So let's see what this is about. That which is associated with abandoning, that which is associated with accomplishing, includes the topic to be expressed in the 4 sections of the Vinaya. So the Vinaya, in the system that the Tibetans are familiar with, the Vinaya Pitaka, the Vinaya collection, is organized into 4 sections. So Chodrak goes on to explain what are the 4. So at the bottom of that first chunk, all of these teach the 4 truths of the Noble Ones in detail. And in this way, sentient beings imagine the suffering of samsara to be happiness. And since the Noble Ones understand it to be suffering, it is called the Noble One's truth of suffering. First noble truth. Sentient beings do not understand the arising of suffering from the cause of suffering, its origin. And because the Noble Ones understand it, it is called the second noble truth, which is the origin of suffering. Sentient beings do not understand that one achieves the result when one abandons that origin. But since the Noble Ones understand that, it is called the Noble One's truth of cessation. Third noble truth. Fourth, sentient beings do not know the antidote, but the Noble Ones know. And so then it's called the Noble One's truth of the path. Moreover, these truths, which are both that which is expressed and the means of expressing it, are certainly nothing but the Vinaya Pitaka. So here, Chodra basically says, explain this statement as that the 4 noble truths is the underlying principle of the Vinaya. And the Vinaya basically pertains to mostly what we would call monks and nuns' vows. But it's not just that. It's really, the expression sometimes is, it's the vows of individual liberation, which is explicitly given the things that we should adopt, the skillful ways of acting that we should adopt, and the unskillful ways of acting that we should abandon. Even though the most extensive discussion of this basic topic, skillful things that we should adopt, unskillful actions that we should abandon, the most extensive discussion is focused on the monks and nuns' vows. But the underlying principle is still about what to adopt and what to abandon. And from that point of view, we all, whether we're monks and nuns or not, we all should pay attention to this. In Sobish's notes, according to the Dorshema, some people say that the 4 truths belong to the Abhidharma category. But Jigten Sungpan's key point, and this is more important. So I think here again, some of these statements, their original context that they're addressing might or might not still be relevant, but the principle that lies behind that statement is what I would say continues to be relevant, which Sobish helps us here. He says, Jigten Sungpan's key point is that the Vinaya scriptures teach what is to be abandoned and what is to be adopted or accomplished. And this is the very theme of the Four Noble Truths itself. And the Rinjangma illustrates the fact that the Vinaya teaches the four truths of the Noble Ones by relating the following story of Bhikshu Dhanika. So remembering that, these early commentaries of Gongchik tell a lot of stories. And this is another point, this is Gongchik's style, original style of Gongchik in making the points, in teaching. They tell a lot of stories, actually. Then later, later commentaries give a lot of philosophy. And it's because, as I said, I think after Sherab Jungne and all that, Gongchik kind of got sucked into the broader philosophical debates that animated much of, the intellectual energy of Tibetan Buddhist debate. So Gongchik kind of got sucked into that. So then later commentaries tend to be very kind of, very heavy on logic-based, philosophy-based, use of categories, use of, tenet, and so on and so forth. But during Sherab Jungne's time, his disciple, his brother, which is who the authors of Rinjangma and Dorshema are, it's much more in the style of the early Kagyupas, which is pith instructions for practice. Not interested in debates, not interested in refuting, defending, all of that, and tend to tell stories. Because stories, can really, in a more organic and flexible way, illustrate the nuances and the points. It's a very different mode, I think, of learning. The type of learning when you say there are four, and each of the four, the first one can be divided into 7 parts. Second point can be divided into 8 parts. Then the 8 parts, can further be divided, each of the parts into 3, right? That kind of learning achieves a certain type of clarity. And then poetry, narratives, stories, that delivers a different kind of clarity. And the early Kagyu, it's much more of the first type. I mean, the second type, right? The storytelling, the poetry, like the songs of Milarepa, and the Doha of the Mahasiddhas. Some of the Mahasiddhas also composed very kind of intricate parsing out, 3 divided into 4, 4 divided into 7, 7 divided into 8, 8 divided into 21, all of that. Some of the Mahasiddhas actually composed things like that as well, but they are also famous for their dohas, for their Vajra songs. So here, let's look at the story. Dhanika stole something from the king, which constitutes the origin of suffering. The king got angry and ordered Dhanika to be executed, which constitutes suffering. If one understands suffering, one abandons the origin of suffering. Thinking, I should not transgress the rules, one trains the mental continuum through views, thoughts, and so on, and abandons transgression, which is the truth of the path. Having abandoned stealing, the fear and suffering of the king's punishment disappears, which is the truth of cessation. Each transgression is thus bound by the 4 truths. So what this early commentary is trying to show is that all these rules that you find, because, okay, you have to understand that primarily all these writings, including Chodra, was written for mainly the audience was mainly monks. So he wants to emphasize, like all these rules that we have in the monastic code, you should really understand that they are all based on the Four Noble Truths. They're based on suffering. What is the cause of suffering? Suffering to be understood, cause of suffering to be abandoned, end of suffering to be experienced, the means to the end, the path to the end to be cultivated. And to always see, like every do and don't, prescription, proscription is based on these four truths. The Dorshema says, the Vinaya teaches those four truths within the two sections, cause and result of abandoning and accomplishing. The existence of mental afflictions in the mental continuum of sentient beings is the origin of suffering. By performing non-virtuous acts issuing from those afflictions, there is the origin of karma. From these two originations of suffering and karma, the result, suffering, arises. Since that is samsara, cause and result, do not perform those acts. To state this is to issue a prohibition, or I would call proscription. The path that is at the root is to attend the Guru. The path that consists of the limbs, the eightfold path of the noble ones, is the cause. The truth of the path of the noble ones. By practicing these paths, the result, the cessation, arises. Since that is nirvana, cause and result, to teach the path is to order the thing to be accomplished, to prescribe the thing to be accomplished. This twofold section of cause and result is the disciplined conduct of reversing what is to be abandoned and the disciplined conduct of engaging in what is to be adopted, what is to be practiced. The vows summarize the disciplined conduct of reversing what is to be abandoned. Concerning this, there is the disciplined conduct of the 253 rules of monks, and since these are the Vinaya Vibhanga, suffering is known through all the vows of that text. Therefore, that is the truth of the noble ones concerning suffering. The cause of that suffering, the origin of suffering, is abandoned. We don't need to read the rest of that because it gets, very detailed. But on your own, of course, you can. So the point here is made clearer for me. This Dorshema is saying, some people say, oh, the Vinaya rules, that's just something that you observe. You keep and you keep the rules and that's it. If you really want to develop understanding of even like the Four Noble Truths, you have to look at the Abhidharma. Because in that category of Vinaya, Sutra and Abhidharma, Abhidharma is by, by superficial appearance. Abhidharma, in fact, the title means higher Dharma. You might think, oh, Abhidharma is really where it is because, it has all this sophisticated language. And Abhidharma is 7 of this, 8 of that, 9 of this, 10 of that. Very systematic presentation. So there are some, in fact, will say, oh, if you really want to understand the Four Noble Truths, look at this Abhidharma. Jigten Simgun's point to the monks, no, look at the vows that you carry. When you begin to look at the vows that you carry, you will see the four truths clearly in the vows that you carry. In other words, don't observe those vows blindly. And don't think that those vows are just something to get out of the way. As in, oh, I'm keeping them, that's enough. Now let me go study something more profound. So, in fact, the vows, whether it's the 5 lay vows, the 253 monks' vows, and 300 and something the nuns' vows, again, 5, 253, 300 something, it's just externally, there are these different numbers. But the underlying principle is the 4 truths. Where the suffering? Where is there suffering? Where does the suffering come from? Where this suffering can end? How will it end? It's all there in the training of the vows. So this is Jiten Sumgön saying, don't think this vow issue is simply memorizing what you can do, what you cannot do, but the essence of the 4 truths is clearly in the vows. Sobish. In the introduction to his commentary and in his comments on Vajra statement 1.1, Chökyi Dragpa explains that Jigten Sumgön's teaching of the inevitability of non-virtue leading to suffering and virtue leading to happiness is of a fundamental nature. Neluk. In his comments on the present Vajra statement, he shows that the Vinaya is the teaching of the 4 noble truths of the noble ones. The 4 truths of the noble ones. He thereby suggests that Jigten Sumgön saw the teachings of the Vinaya as the teaching of the fundamental nature of reality and not merely as a collection of rules for the ordained community. We will have plenty of occasions to explore this topic elsewhere and throughout, I would say, the Gongchik. I feel that sometimes some people also make the mistake and say, oh, the Gongchik is all about monastic matters. No, it's not. It's about cause and effect. And then in terms of, the most extensive treatment of cause and effect, it's in the most number of vows. In that sense, the nuns' vows, 300 something, is the most extensive, offers the most maximum security. Then those of us who only have 5 or 4 or 3 or 2, we are living dangerously. It's like those people with no masks and no hand sanitizer, and they're protesting, the shutdown, living extremely dangerously. So they might think that they are Mahasiddhas until suffering arrives. Likewise, we, some people in Tibetan communities, Tibetan Buddhist centers and all that, some, I have the highest teachings, I have Mahamudra, I have Dzogchen, I don't need to keep all these, rules for dummies, We are guided by the mind. No need, all this, 10 this, don't do, 10 that, please do. Living dangerously. You want maximum protection, and not protection in a blind way. It's also not advocating, oh, let me keep the 300 and so rules, then obsessively, oh, this rule, this rule, this rule. No. The point is, if you know how to keep the vows, there, just by attending to the vows, you do see the principles of cause and effect. You see the 4 truths. Then you instinctively know what to abandon and what to adopt. And if you can do that, what else do you need? If you cannot do that, whatever else you think is going to be supreme and amazing, they're just distractions. I want to share with you a quote. Now I remember. Let me look for it. Khenchen Rinpoche, in one of his books. I know where I shared it to, so that is good. He talked about pure vision, which is right? Which is a topic that is very sexy for Vajrayana people. Pure vision, pure vision, pure vision, you know. And people think, you know, oh, you can get pure vision by just, you know, going around, mouthing out pure vision, or mystically feel pure. Everything I view now is pure. You know. Then some maybe even ingest things, you know, to make everything pure, you know. So Khenchen Rinpoche, in his book, A Complete Guide to the Buddhist Path, page 75, 76, he says, what do we have to do in order to achieve pure vision? First, we should avoid all non-virtues and then develop all virtues. Right from the beginning, this will start to make our mind pure. By purifying our mind, we will achieve pure vision. Then, in the Mahayana, so he's dividing this into the first turning, second turning, third turning. Or in this case, Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, the vocabulary. First, he doesn't say in the book, in the Hinayana, he says, but it is that he says so. Then in the Mahayana, there are detailed teachings about loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. Purifying negative thoughts by using these methods is the root of achieving pure vision for all sentient beings. On the basis of these practices, the first two sets, the Vajrayana provides the opportunity to see all beings as deities. But without having a pure and sincere sense of loving kindness and compassion, how could we visualize our enemy as a deity or Buddha? When we can see everyone as a deity, how could anger and attachment possibly arise? When attachment and anger are purified, then there is pure vision. This step-by-step development is what our practice is all about. Yeah, good. Questions, comments? Yes?
To that point, it sort of reminds me of the idea of samaya.
Go ahead, say more.
That the idea of samaya is like when I first heard about it.
Yes.
Sometimes it seems like something very special that is kind of beyond my scope. But
Wait,
then
say that again. Yeah. Say that again.
The idea of samaya seems super like special. And, like, Vajrayana, like beyond wherever I am. But then there's this notion of samaya as like a boundary, like the vows that you take. At a more basic level, there's something fundamental there that's important.
Yes. And as far as samaya goes, I've said again and again, Gongchik Rinpoche says, yes, this way, he says, samaya is love. Not ordinary, attachment love, but love and care and concern.
I was kind of thinking about that when you mentioned earlier at the start, just kind of in passing, how if you're going to attend the Vesak celebration tomorrow, one way or another, you should decide and not like waffle back and forth.
Yeah, that's samaya too. That's commitment. In the broader sense of samaya, you know.
Right. I think for myself, I'm starting to see how important it is, like especially in a specific session, to like sit down and know with myself what I'm going to do and commit to that, and not break that.
Yes.
I can see how dangerous it is if I start to break that, like say, oh, I'm getting tired, I'm not going to finish, and you habituate that.
Yeah, and then you habituate that. Or like you say, oh, I'm going to do this. Yes, I'm going to do this. Tomorrow, I'm going to do this. I'm going to join this virtual practice, right? And then for whatever reason, like all sorts of things can happen between now and tomorrow. Of course, within reason. But a lot of times it's just we get distracted. And then the next morning, you know, it comes time and you feel groggy and you're like, oh, I did not prepare the shrine. I don't know. I'm not in the mood. I'm not going to do it. It seems like, you know, it's just no big deal. But you're setting that habit pattern so that when you do sit down and you say, okay, now I'm going to practice shamatha. So you sit and you're going to watch your breath. Guess what? That same kind of pattern is going to come in that says, this is really boring. And why you give in so immediately to this is really boring, or I'm not feeling good, I'm not feeling up to it, it comes from a habit pattern. It didn't come from nowhere. It's not that mysterious. So if we look across, you know, then of course, in fact, it should be that everything, not just Dharma, that we do, this principle should carry forward. But right now, it's kind of hard to carry it forward to every domain. So what I'm saying, what I'm recommending is, at least with regards to Dharma, please give more attention that, you know, resolve to do something, do it, finish it, complete it. Even if it is torturous, commit to it. Or be realistic and say, no, not doing. Be done with it. There is a cleanness. Otherwise, this lingering and this lingering, you know, unfinished business that you sort of want to start, you cannot finish. I can tell you from experience, it eats up a lot of energy. It sucks up a lot of your energy. It's like a vampire. There's always around. And all that unfinished stuff, it's going to rob you of your life force. So samaya, in the broadest sense of the word, I've always said, you know, I think many Vajrayana communities misuse samaya as a means to control people, to put people in their place, and then to form like these clubs with levels and levels of access to the guru. Samaya is used, you know, as a way to, in such a unfortunate way. So I tend not to want to use that term, but then at some point we have to begin to understand how wonderful samaya is and the broader implications of what samaya means. So this question, right, of like commitment to do something is a form of samaya. And then if you remember Kyabje Gajeren Rinpoche's point that samaya is love, then you cannot, you know, like think I'm going to fulfill my samaya without love. Love here means what? In this particular context, loving in a skillful way your own happiness and suffering. So you have approached this toughness with love. And say, I'm tough to myself because, in this case, not because like I am a bad person, and I need to be tough with myself. That I'm an undeserving person, I'm not good enough, so I need to be tough with myself. But rather, you need to be tough with yourself because you know how to love yourself. You know how to care for yourself. You know how to be kind to yourself. And you say, you know, this initial temporary discomfort and suffering is worth it, considering what fruits it can bear. And so you almost have to say to yourself, so, Han, you know, you might feel like I'm torturing you now, that I'm being so mean to you now, but really, you know, this is how I can really care for you. So please cooperate. So sometimes you have to talk to yourself like this.
Han?
Yes.
Would you repeat the chapter or the phrase from Khenchen Rinpoche that you just...
Oh, it's page 75 on his book, Complete Guide to Enlightenment. Complete Path to Enlightenment, I think.
Okay, Complete Guide to the Buddhist Path.
Yeah, that's one of his books, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, and so it's on page 75.
Okay, great, thanks.
I could massage that section better. I think it was could have been edited more, crafting some of those words, you know. Very nice, that section, you know. Tease out all the implications, you know, how pure vision on the level. So this is, you know, this is classic Gongchik, you know, Khenchen Rinpoche, classic Gongchik, right? And even there, he is already showing you there's pure vision on the Hinayana level, there's pure vision on the Mahayana level, there's pure vision on the Vajrayana level. So pure vision is not just a matter of Vajrayana. Yes, the expression is a Vajrayana vocabulary, but the principle cannot be not present in the first turning, in the second turning, in the third turning, in the first vehicle, in the, you know, hina, the lesser vehicle, greater vehicle, and indestructible vehicle. It's all there. This is really classic Gongchik. Beautiful. When you look at Khenchen Rinpoche's teachings, you know, not just because he's my main teacher, I'm praising him like that, you know, but if you really look, you know, and he will not explicitly tell you, oh, this is Gongchik. And the reason why he doesn't do that is because, you know, for him, he really absolutely, I think this is fundamentally just the Buddha's teachings. So he sees it as even unnecessary to say, oh, this is Gongchik. But of course, I come from an academic background. So I confess, you know, for me, I want to make very clear, you know, this is the distinctive style of Gongchik. But Khenchen Rinpoche, if I say that to him, I can tell you, he will say, no, this is just Buddha's teachings. Yeah. So that's why he doesn't say, oh, according to Gongchik, he will say, you know, this is Buddha's teachings. And that is why he doesn't explicitly state it's Gongchik. Not because he doesn't want people to know, you know, that he is basing everything he teaches on the Gongchik. But for him, there's no difference between Gongchik and the essence of Buddha, what Buddha taught. So we will end today here. If you want to join tomorrow, please do. Please, as I said, feel free to invite others to join us. I will share the text. And then when you invite others, again, I ask that you not just, you know, blanket send out to people and bomb them, whether they want or they don't want. You can first start by asking if you want to join, please then send them that information. I again I want to say, thank you for your commitment, joining me, many of you, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, without fail, because also your circumstance, and then many of others of you, your circumstance is different. But in the end, you have to decide, whether you can change circumstance, or circumstance are more powerful right now. You have to see. But I want to say again, being able to meet 3 times a week on this material, it's my great fortune. You are part of the causes and conditions that allows me to stay focused in this way. And so this is really meaningful. And these teachings, I feel, for me, I think if I teach nothing else but this, and if, of course, I have to study and practice this, if nothing else that I have done, and only this, then no regrets. So thank you for joining this. And particularly too, I said, I feel I don't necessarily need or want, lots of people to join all the things that I do. But I would rather that those of us of like mind, of like understanding, devoted to the same guru, the same mandala. Guru Jitensunban, I'm not talking about me. That we remain kind of focused and practicing together. When we practice with harmony, when we practice, with one mandala, in the mandala of Kyoba Rinpoche, the practice is way more meaningful and blessings. So in part why I keep saying, don't just send it out to everyone and anyone. It's not to be exclusive. It's just that it's not necessary to bring in so many people that will come and go and come and go and come and go. And then people who, when they go, maybe they're not happy with this or that, then it creates this kind of disharmony. But I also want to be careful, not to talk about harmony, because I've also seen how in practice communities, the word harmony can also be used to kind of control and terrorize people. It's just terrible, I mean, sentient beings are so capable of using just about anything to create suffering. So anyway, it's good to be lighthearted too, not to become so dead serious, then everything becomes so heavy. Don't do that either. I'm reminding myself as well. So anyway, thank you so much. Now, Changchu Semjo Rinpoche. Yeah. Changchu Semjo Rinpoche. Ma ge pa nam ge gyurche. Ge ba nyam pa me pa. Gong ne gong du bell war shu. Hasta mañana.
Hasta mañana.
Bye.
Gracias.